invocation.
God, our divine spirit, we beseech thee to grant us the privilege, the wisdom, and the ability to make the proper decisions for our city. We ask you also to bless our country and the universe. We thank thee. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Scott Tremblay.
Here.
Vice Mayor William Dittmer.
Here.
Councilwoman Jenny Sorrell.
Here.
Councilman Todd McClary.
Here.
Councilwoman Angel Nally.
Here.
City Attorney James Matthew.
Here.
City Manager Vincent Lupo.
Here.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve council minutes?
Motion to approve minutes?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. At this time, we're going to move on to comments from the general public. We'll start with Mr. Thomas Brown, please.
Thomas Brown, 7436 Candlelight Court. Thank you, City Manager, for getting Orange Grove Avenue paved. I can now get to Candlelight Court, which looks like an area of high criminal activity, without dodging a dozen potholes. It's all the fences and signs, one of which is an illegal city-owned sign that makes the area appear to be of high criminal activity. Months ago, I asked the city to remove or to meet city ordinance with their no trespassing sign, but nothing has been done. Please remove the sign or put up one that complies with city code. Please read the code and measure the sign. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. The next person that I had was Pat Rogers.
Pat Rogers, 4838 Sunset Boulevard. I'm here tonight instead of Pastor Leonard because he had a mandatory sheriff's office meeting tonight for all the chaplains. And I wanted to, through him, thank the city for all their assistance with the back-to-school backpack program. We were able to give out over 200 backpacks to needy families in Port Richey, plus feed them and let the kids play and have a really good time. They really enjoyed the fire department and the police department coming over and showing them equipment. And actually, one little girl had him put her dad in handcuffs, which everybody thought was really funny. And also, I have given to Sal this, which we've been yesterday at school, first day of school, handing these out to parents who indicated an interest in them. And it's something that everybody needs to know and needs to pass on to all their friends and family members, to go to this website, protectpascochildren.org, and see what we have found that's in the school's website for how the teachers are to conduct themselves. And it's not good. And we've got good teachers, but they're getting some really bad instructions. So we need everybody's help in the city to get the word out. And on another thing, I just want to say thank you for being such a good city and taking care of us.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. The next person that I had was Robert, is it Reed?
Robert Reed, 7814 Pier Road. Good evening and congratulations on forming a new city council. May your work bear fruit in accordance with the needs and desires of the city residents. Before you, I have placed pages. The first is several copies of the city ordinance as copied from the website. The second is a copy of a letter that I sent to 3 venues, bars, restaurants, music venues in the area that may or may not have known what the ordinance was, and I also gave a copy to the police, our local police. In it, I requested enforcement, in as much as requested enforcement, I was told that I must call in a complaint to enforcement every time. This seems logical on its face if my neighbor is being too loud with music or motorcycles or beatings. However, when an established venue such as a bar or restaurant, my neighbors and I feel that the standard in the ordinance should be checked and enforced often, at random, and without prior notice. Not only do two of the venues closest to me fail to stay within the decibels of the code, one of them fails to stay within the decibels of the code after 10 o'clock. They think it's 11 o'clock. Where the reading is taken in decibels is crucial. Taking that reading from the street with buildings, cars, berms, etc. between you and the decibel reading is wrong, and it must be taken from the lot line closest to the source. All three of these places are dockside. You'd have to take it from their dock. In conclusion, my neighbors have been cited or have been ceased to complain for fear of various ordinance retribution from the venues, and that has happened, and possibly from the previous city councils. I feel that we are being deprived of the use of our own outdoor areas on Friday afternoon, Friday afternoon and evening, Saturday afternoon and evening, and Sunday afternoon. You can't even grill a steak or fish from my dock without being blown over by the music. I'd appreciate starting a dialogue among city council and among the residents to see what can be done about this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. The final person that I had signed up was Sandra Spalding, or Reverend Spalding.
8612 Green Street. I have a complaint. And I want all of you please to pay attention to my complaint. In the dispatch office, the floor is atrocious. That is not an expensive thing to do, put down tiles or something. And I really feel that it would be to our city's benefit and to our police benefit if you did that ASAP. Go and look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spalding. Were there any other residents that would like to speak that were not signed up? Seeing no hands at this time, we're going to switch general comments to the city manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there are two issues I would like to speak to. The first one is to remind everyone that we're going to be beginning our cleanup campaign in the second and third week of September. We're already preparing for it. There'll be additional information on our website about dropping off, pick up and drop off on what you can bring and what you can't bring. So I would ask you to take a look at our website so that we can get ready for our September cleanup. The next issue concerns a request from the CAC committee where they have stepped forward and are interested in beginning to have a Christmas event scheduled for Saturday, December the 14th, of course, depending upon weather. And Ms. Smith, if you would like to speak to this issue.
Claudia Smith, 7335 Candlelight Court. The committee would like to have Christmas in the park. We would like it on the 14th afternoon, I think starting probably 2 to 5, a family event. Have Santa, have hot chocolate, have a few vendors, and make this something that we do every year. We put a little bit together for FCT, but I asked the city to take a look at it, the city manager and the assistant city manager, just to take a look at it. And then on Thursday, when we have our normal meeting, then we can start putting something together to be able to present to you for approval. And then from there, we would like to put it in front of FCT by September 1st. So, anyway, it's something that I don't think has ever been done before. It is gonna be family. We did put on our request alcohol, but I think that's something we're gonna need to revisit, because we are looking at it to be a family event. I don't think alcohol would probably be appropriate at that event, but our committee would be talking about it on Thursday. So we hope that you, agree with us and, support us for it.
If I might, Ms. Smith, the concept involves, the city has always had its own separate function at Christmas. I believe the concept now is to coordinate the two together, so that we would have one event on the Christmas. And in that event, we'll be working with the CAC with respect to what they have outlined, and with the Florida Communities Trust as far as utilization of the waterfront park. So we would have one combined effort, if you will, that would become a standard city Christmas event through our CAC committee. And at that point in time, we could even incorporate the movies that we had talked about. We currently have a license to show a Christmas movie that was supposed to be scheduled for last year, but was rained out. So if council is of opinion that we should consolidate the effort and to move forward in a continued effort with respect to the CAC, I'll move in that direction. Let's simply like to have council's opinion, and no need for a resolution or a memo.
I think it's a great idea.
Me too.
I agree.
And I think the thing that we're gonna need up front is what we may need permits for, is that we'll have to work on those. And certainly what needs to be budgeted, because it'll be nice to have a family event that focuses children around Christmas time in the
We
community.
actually did have a line item in the budget for city events.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that the council is in agreement. We'll get with Ms. Smith and the CAC and try and move forward with whatever licensing we may need, whatever permissions we may need from the FCT, and move forward.
Thank you, thank you.
One,
Ms. Rogers?
yeah, I have one other item. That's
Okay.
here to Ms. Rogers.
Pat Rogers, 4838 Sunset Boulevard. To go along with the Christmas party, Light of the World Tabernacle and Pastor Leonard are willing to work with the city on anything that they can help set up for the party.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers.
Certainly. Sir. I have one other item that I'd like to, for the general public. On the, prior to the next city council meeting, there will be the installation of another library box. This one will be at the fishing pier. The library box, I believe, was constructed by Mr. Lee, and we'll be installing that there, and like to invite the general public and council to the grand opening, if you will, of that library box. Many of the citizens, particularly CAC, Mr. Lee, and others, have worked very hard with this project, and so far we have several up, and I believe we're going to have several more. So it'll be at our next council meeting, I believe, on the 27th. 27th is the next council meeting, I believe.
Correct.
Yes.
So it'll be at 6 p.m. on the 27th at the fishing pier. And that's really generally all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Lupo. Any comments by any council members?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
I do. In regard to Mr. Reed's problem, I really do have a problem of retribution by either this city or any business in this city towards any residents. So I think that needs to be addressed by the police department. If we have retribution of any kind that is happening on, that is just totally unacceptable. Most of the businesses have have procured the sound decimal systems. We need to find out if Whiskey River has their own and if they know how to properly use it. And in reference to the dispatch floor, I've been asking our city manager to do something about our police department for several months now. We are waiting for the dispatch system to be finished so that they can do the floor without causing any damage to it. I'm actually hoping for a paint job too, so I have a dream. But anyway, on the noise situation, I do think that we need to address it.
Councilwoman, we have continually been working to get that dispatch office up and running. We even looked at new chairs, more comfortable seating, painting, doing the floors. And the reason we have not moved forward with many of those is that the technicians tell us that all of that moving around until those new, the new equipment is installed, they become very sensitive, and we don't want to be responsible for breaking that new equipment or for disrupting it. But we're almost done, as I believe Mike.
It's still in the process. We're constantly in communications with the vendor that supplies the software, and with the large portion of the actual system is already built on the county end of it. So now we're just working on getting the physical installation of the software package.
And we'll move towards refurbishing as quickly as we can as soon as the current budget is passed.
If I may weigh in on that issue too. I toured the police department and I noticed the same thing, and one of the things that I noticed was that on the floor set, looked like a lot of expensive equipment was just sitting on the floor with wires everywhere, and there wasn't really any conduit to protect the wiring off the floor. And one of the questions I had is whether or not they plan on building shelves to bring the equipment that's fairly expensive off the floor, and then conduit, so it's either behind the wall or attached to the wall, so it's not down by people's feet and running under desk and everywhere else it was. Do you know?
The installers are in the process of rearranging all of that. There may be a separate partition to keep it apart. I'm not really familiar with the specifics, but it'll be done in accordance with the requirements of the material itself.
Okay, so that's been addressed though?
It's being addressed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lupo.
I would just like, the police department to follow up with me and the residents that have had the problem with the noise issues so that we can resolve this as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Were there any other comments?
Actually, over to Mr. Reed's comment as well. The police department has certified noise decibel meters in their possession?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so they can do checks periodically, because they note the Friday night, the Saturday night, maybe we do periodic checks and in a friendly way, notify the businesses just to let them know that, it's being monitored, it is a resident concern, and making sure that, they're staying within the ordinance requirements.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Were there any other comments?
I was going to address that same issue. What I've done ride-alongs with the officers, it seemed like that was a standard procedure to stop and meter the businesses. Is that still being done? We don't always put a meter on them at all times, but at any point that it seems excessively loud, they'll stop and they'll meter it, or they'll make contact and try and resolve it before it becomes an issue.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. If there's no further comments, if you,
You can't make it.
No.
no.
You can recognize it, but the spelling,
Still Bob Reed, still 7814 Pier Road. Monitoring has to be done at the lot line. If you monitor, say, Whiskey Joe's, from the car, in the street, you're behind the building, behind the berm, behind the rest of the cars. You've wasted your time. It has to be done, all of that monitoring should be done where it's going to be the loudest and where it's going to be perceived by the public to be nuisance, and that's on their dock. I've been on Whiskey River's dock at 90 decibels. Think about that. You can't hear yourself think at 90 decibels. That's all I have to say. It has to be done on their docks.
Thank you, Mr. Reed.
Could theoretically put the decibel meter on the boat. Take the boat out.
So we're gonna move on to the next item. And that's gonna be, are there any,
Any reports?
No, Ms. Smith already gave a report from CAC.
so that's the only report we have?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
she does.
Oh, I'm
Okay.
sorry, Ms. Smith.
Yes.
My pimple, I won't go away.
That's true.
Thank you. Claudia Smith, 7335 Candlelight Court. First of all, I would like to thank you for taking care of Orange Grove. The residents are thrilled, and I have a lot of people that have just, they can't thank you enough, so thank you for doing that. Just a couple of things that I wanted to remind you about and make sure that you know that you are invited. We have our next Meet Your Neighbor, September 18th at the Pirate Bar, 5:30 to 7. We've started the advertising. We haven't put anything in the paper yet, but that will be forthcoming. So we're also asking a couple of the city employees to come. I've asked Dallas to come. I've asked Jocelyn to come. And we're going to talk to Sal and ask Sal to come. The people really enjoy having an employee there that they can talk to. Last one, we had a lot of the fire department and police department, and they really enjoy that. It gives a face with a name. So that's the next event. We ordered banners, and I have banners now that say Port Richey Citizens Advisory Committee, and then they have our email address at the bottom. And whenever we're at an event, we're going to have them either on our tent or our table. And what brought that about is that at the last event, which was Culver's celebration, a lot of people were walking up and going, "Who are you?" And so we are now going to be advertising who we are. They are red with white writing, so you won't be able to miss us. The next CAC meeting is Thursday, August 15th at 7 o'clock. And I wanted to let you know and also the public know. The main reason I am up here though, when we were cleaning the parks, we noticed in Nix Park and in Waterfront Park that those kiosks are in really bad shape. Maybe really is not quite it. They need to be refreshed. The CAC would like to do the labor. We would like to refresh them with new paint, and we've looked at posters. The posters that are in there, they're all faded. They're ugly. So Swift Mud will, I ordered 10 posters from them for free. They'll give us anything and everything we want. And the ones that I ordered were like native plants, reptiles, frogs, birds, butterflies, mammals, mammals, trees, and shrubs. And we would put those in the kiosks. We're gonna probably allow some spot in the one in Waterfront where we can show events, like Meet Your Neighbor, cleanup events, that sort of thing. But we would like to take that on as a project and get those painted and refreshed before snowbirds start coming in. And we need your approval to do that. So that is why I'm here tonight. I am hoping that I can get approval for us to take that on as a project and get them painted.
Is there anything other than approval that you need, any materials or any?
We need paint. We would love to have paint, but we'll do it ourselves if we have to.
City will provide the paint.
Thank you.
I have no objection.
Oh, yep.
No objection.
I've got vote.
Yep.
Thank you. And that's all.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. At this time, I'd like to see if there's any motions to approve tonight's agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Consent agenda, yeah.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
And if we may, let's move on to council business,
Three.
which is the number 3. I have a 2 and a 3. So we're gonna move on to item 3, which is consideration of a bid award for replacement of iron filter media.
Mayor and council, as city council will recall, the city intends to replace the iron filter media at the water treatment plant. The city worked with U.S. Water to prepare plans and specifications for this project. The budget on this project was estimated at $65,000 and would be funded from the utility fund. The project was advertised through a public bid process on BidNet Direct, with bids due on July 12, 2019. The city received 2 bids on this project. Those bid proposals are attached for your review. The bidders, S4 Water Sales and Service, is $71,317, and PCL Construction Incorporated, $189,000. We request a motion to award a bid to S4 Water Sales and Services for the replacement of the iron filter media in the amount of $71,317, who was the low bidder. This is absolutely critical, a critical effort for the replacement of the filter media, sometimes called green sand. It is part and parcel of the process that is necessary in order to provide clean, clear water to our system.
And before I open for discussion, I did want to ask a question, and there's a very large disparity in the 2 bids we had. Are they comparing apples to apples in terms of the service that they're going to provide?
It is absolutely more than that. We had assistance from U.S. Water to work with the bid specs and the bidders themselves, and based on what they provided, it is their recommendation that we go with the low bidder.
At this time, I'm going to open for discussion amongst council, if there's any discussion. If not, I'll entertain any motions.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the bid to S4 Water in the amount of $71,317.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I didn't see Mr. Mueller had signed up. So we'll allow comments.
Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive. I appreciate Mayor, Council, and Administration for letting me speak. I too noted that there was a large discrepancy in price, meaning that somebody was looking at apples and oranges. You don't get that kind of disparity with that kind of scenario. And I appreciate the time and effort that went into this effort. One of the things I noted is U.S. Water was listed further down in this package as an experienced group that helped provide instrumental counseling and consulting in this effort. I'm wondering why they weren't considered or did not bid on this project.
They're
They did
precluded from
download-
bidding, sir.
They did download the product.
They were precluded from bidding because they were involved in the considerations.
Okay. And I'm also wondering why we're not getting the number of bids. I think that we need to look at some other alternatives, some of which being a post-mortem on this, where you had that many bidders downloading the bid documents and no bids, just 2 bids coming up, and this has been a constant theme that I'm seeing. I think we need to do some serious soul searching internally and figure out what's going on, potentially a survey to address how do we improve the process and get more participation. I think that everybody benefits if we get more people, more companies engaged in this situation. I think you guys are doing a great job, but I'm concerned that we need to do something, and maybe it's the fact that we've had turmoil in the city, and now we've turned that corner. What can we do as a group to try to address that and potentially look at opportunities to get more other companies in the game? That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller.
Thank you.
At this time, I wanted to move on. That motion passed to number 4 on the agenda, which is a consideration of a purchase of well number 7 and improvements on that well.
Mayor and council, for city council consideration is funding to remove and relocate all wellhead discharge piping and appurtenances from well number 5 to MW7A, which has been converted to a water production well. The water treatment plant staff has obtained 3 quotes for this work effort that are included in your agenda package. Staff recommends the approval of $24,955.76 to U.S. Water for the aforementioned costs with this project. As we spoke earlier, and I've spoken many times with respect to the transfer of a monitoring well to a full production well, this is the final end stage and the critical stage to get that well number 7 back into, well, actually into full production, and to turn well number 5 into an absolute monitoring well. And it is the final process in that reconstruction in order to continue the volume and quality of production at our wellhead site over on the Bandora site. Staff recommends approval of the U.S. Water bid of $24,955.76.
And I had a question for you before we open up for motion or bids. I noticed that this actually had more competitive bidding. There was another bid that came in, it looked like maybe $1,000 less. And then one that came in about $20,000 or so higher. What was the recommendation, or what came into play in terms of the recommendation between the bottom 2 bids? There was a...
The slightly higher bidder is absolutely familiar with the project. They were the original installers of all the existing equipment, and the engineering and professional services along with the plans are available for us during the project. U.S. Water will be able to help with the final sampling and approval for DEP. And as-built site plans would be provided at the end of the project, and that's the reasons why we went with a slightly higher bid.
At this time, were there any, I'll open up for any discussion amongst council or motions.
The third bidder, Environmental Inc., had other services, $20,000 for a 100 amp, 460 volt, 3-phase service, associated panel that wasn't included on the first 2 bids. Is that a required scope of work, or?
No, that was their effort to move forward on removal and replacement.
So it's not required?
No, sir.
As part of?
No, the project will be completed with the $24,955.76.
Okay. So the third bid, the highest bidder is actually closer to the other 2. Once you
Combined.
take out that scope.
They're still
Yeah.
high.
They're still higher,
Yeah.
but they're closer higher.
Yeah.
Any further discussion or motions?
Motion to approve, 24,000.
One more quick question. The lowest bidder, E&R Mechanical, has concrete pads included. I'm assuming U.S. Water Services has all required concrete work?
All required work, sir. Yes, sir.
And back to Councilwoman.
Okay, motion to approve, $24,955.76 to U.S. Water for the affirmation cost associated with this project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Before we vote, I saw someone had signed up from the general public, so I'm going to open the floor to, I think Mr. Mueller was the only one that had signed up.
Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive. Thank you again for letting me speak. I noticed in this particular bid, U.S. Water was a participant. So how is it that they got to bid on this one and not the other one? Also, these were not sealed bids, these were direct quotes, I believe. Was there the ability to leverage multiple pieces of work, item 3 and item 4, together with a vendor to get a better price? Just some ideas.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
With that, that motion passes. We'll move on to the fifth agenda, which is going to be consideration of ordinance 18665. And I was going to pass this over to Mr. Matthew for clarification on what that is.
Background?
Yep.
This is, this is the ordinance that was passed last year in which, no, let me back it up this way to keep it simple. Our code used to state that the city manager set the agenda. Last year, council decided that in addition to the city manager that sets the agenda, that any council member could place something on the agenda. So if you look at the ordinance, you'll see what's underlined there is what was added. In addition, any city council member or the mayor may submit an agenda item should be placed upon the agenda, and then further petitions, communications, resolutions, or city council or mayor agenda items or reports. So it's a practical matter. When you read further down, it's the same thing. So this is the change that was done last year.
Okay. And for the record, this is, for discussion, something that I asked to be placed on. The reason I asked to be placed on is before, historically, what would happen is the city manager and staff would have a lot of time to prepare things that went into these particular discussions and votes, which I think reduced the time of the meetings and really kept us on focus in terms of what was going to be discussed at the meetings. My issue in terms of the mayor position in running these meetings is, while it seems like we don't put a lot of time in because the meetings are fairly short a lot of times, there's a lot of preparation work that goes in behind the scenes before we get here. And part of the preparation work precludes myself and the council from speaking to each other. And the reason I mention that is it becomes problematic if I, for example, decide a day or two before an agenda or a meeting to put something on the agenda. It doesn't give staff time to really prepare, and it does. And Mr. Ditmore or nobody can call me and ask me, hey, what's this all about? So it creates a problem in terms of preparation for the meetings, which is why I think that it was originally done the same way for such a long period of time under the original statute. Since have taken this position, I wanted to go back to the older way, which would allow the city time to put things together and give us more time to prepare as things are placed on the agenda for the meetings. So that's why I wanted to bring this back up. That's why I asked them to put it on tonight for discussion and potentially resolution in terms of reverting back to the old way where the city manager sets the agenda for the council meetings.
Well, I'd like to speak to that. I actually like the idea that we can put things on the agenda, but we all has to be sensitive to staff time. I recently asked for something to be put on the agenda, but for next meeting out. Okay, so if everybody is a little more sensitive to the time of everybody, I don't think this is a problem. I understand last minute things, but we all have to consider that. We don't want to waste staff time and then all of us don't have time. So I like that we all can do it. I just think we all have to, decide that we're going to be nice about it and push it off and give everybody the allotted amount of time to get it on the agenda.
I'm in agreement with Will. I think it is important that we all be able to add items to the agenda as we see fit and as we get feedback from the residents for discussion purposes. We have to be sensitive to the needs and the time requirements to put those items on. I have no problems, putting a restriction on of some sort that has to be a meeting, or even a friendly agreement that has to be a meeting out, or whatever the case may be, just for their, there's no reason why we should put undue burden on our manager, city manager, and employees. But I am I think it's very important that we be able to add items to the city agenda.
I understand, but as it sits now, the way that the ordinance reads, a day or two before the agenda, I can say, hey, I want this put on there, and it's gotta be put on there, and I think from a preparation standpoint, there needs to be maybe a time requirement baked into that, if that's what it's gonna be.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I don't want to weigh in on it one way or the other, but the ordinance already has that in it. In other words, it says, "For reports committees, any reports committee shall be in the hands of the city clerk on or before 5 PM on the Wednesday previous to the Tuesday regular meeting." That's already in here.
Yeah,
So
but the
just so you
agenda-
I'm just telling you, at 5:01, somebody comes in, then you're asking Mr. Lupo to say, no, sorry, you can't put that on there. I'm just telling you that's what happens, okay? Not that I'm pushing it one way or the other, but it's already in here.
Correct, but that's what I'm saying, that's not a whole lot of time for
That's
staff. to
too short a
prepare.
time,
Right,
yeah.
that's what I was getting at.
But I think as council members, we all have a little respect for staff, you know, as much as we try to do the best we can, so you can dictate that, but I think as we're all up here, we're all trying to do the best thing that we can for the city, and by ramrodding something the last minute, now, there's emergencies, I'm sure something can come up, and we'll all agree to that.
Of course.
But as adults in the room, I think we can manage to not overburden the city staff.
I'd like to think that the dialogue is open enough between council members and city manager. If, you know, we come and say, hey, we would like an item on the agenda, well, I can't put it on, can we get it to the next one? We would be receptive enough, assuming a non-emergency function, then yes.
Oh, I've got an opinion on that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, in view of our recent problems that we've had with the council members that have been up here, I don't see them always being totally responsible adults in the room. And the other thing is we're not allowed to speak to each other, and that is a big problem in its own right, is, you know, I can't come up with a problem and then call you up and say, what do you think this should be on there? We can't do that. That's why the city manager has always had the control and had the respect for each one of his council people to put on the agenda things that are pertinent. Because really, the way that it reads right now, I can put it on the reading of Harry Potter series next meeting, and he has to put it on there. And I don't think anybody wants me to read Harry Potter to them. I mean, you know, but I'm saying I can be that freaking nutty. And like I said, in recent events in our city, I'm not quite sure that we'll always be fortunate enough to have a council that is smart enough to figure that out. And this kind of helps at least put the control in one person's hands. Now, I seriously think that if we have a city manager that is ignoring our council requests, then that is our problem. That's what we need to come and address. If our city manager is not recognizing each one of the council members and what they need to have on the agenda, then we need to address our city manager. And we can do that as a council. This just makes sure that nobody goes off and reads Harry Potter at the next meeting.
And I agree, and that's the reason I brought it, and that was the other thing that I thought about when you made a good point, that if the city manager's not putting the appropriate things on our agenda, that's a simple fix.
Exactly.
You know, so, but historically, it's always been a different way where the city manager controls the agenda, and it had been effective for such a long period of time. I thought that that was something we may want to revisit and reconsider going back to.
And I agree with you, just in view of the last 6 to 8 months in our city, I think that we have maybe got to consider this seriously.
You know what they say, too many chefs in the kitchen can spoil the sauce.
So, at this time, can they motion to change it, or is it just discussion?
Well, yeah, council could do anything they want. If you wanted to change this, somebody could motion, I don't want to change it. Somebody wanted to change it, you would make a motion for those changes. It'd have to change the ordinance to readings, like any other ordinance. not that that's a big deal, but you're either, somebody wants to make a motion, I don't wanna do that, or if somebody wants to make a motion, I wanna change it back to where it is, I'd bring it back as a first reading. That's how it would happen, not just a vote. It's an ordinance, part of our code now, so we have to change it.
So to go back to Mr. Lupo then, or Jocelyn, when you make changes like that, what do you feel? I mean, how much time, more time is better, obviously. So would you say like anything within so many days roll to the next following meeting? Or, I mean, that would solve some of that problem.
Council, maybe I can help you. For 8 years, when I was here the first time, I never really had a problem with requests of my council to put an item on the agenda because, in my opinion, 99.9% of them were absolutely legitimate and absolutely needed to go on the agenda. More recently, in my recent tenure here for approximately 3 years now, up until this ordinance, we managed to succeed in putting items on the agenda. However, once this ordinance was passed, I can attest to the fact that we received requests that were thin at best and required inordinate amounts of time in order to prepare properly so that we could come before the council and the general public and present a calm, clear, concise, cogent response to the request. And I would be a poor city manager to neglect any request from any council person to put a legitimate item on the agenda. And I would hope that the items coming before council would have enough information that they can make a informed decision to give us approval and/or guidance. And again, our problems as staff have been a recent, quasi-recent event and not a current event. So either direction the council chooses to move, as long as staff has enough time to prepare a reasonable, cogent report for council, we can work around it. So it's whatever council chooses to do.
In view of that, to have the time that you're saying we'd still have to change the ordinance
We'd still
for
would
the
have to,
future,
yeah.
for the future. The other thing is taking the personalities out and the responsibility that our city manager already has shown to us and everybody else. What if we do not get a city manager that has that same, moral ethic to it? I'm thinking, and I believe, that if we take this out, that we will be improving the meetings that we have. And if we have an issue, we can always address it in the meeting. It's not like we have time for comment, we have time for old business, we have time to bring it up in here. So if the council starts to become unsettled because they can't get items on the agenda, I think we can still address that. But I think that for the future, and for the future councils and the future people that are coming in here, and the future city managers and our future staff people, that taking this out will improve the efficiency that our government will run. So I would like to make a motion to revise it back to what it used to be. Would that be appropriate?
It's a good enough motion.
Okay.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second it.
Is there any, there's no comments from the general public who wanted to sign up for this? Reverend Spalding?
I didn't sign up, but my opinion is let's go back to what it was, so we don't have any future cowboys on that council that decide to make everything they want last minute. I mean, we have a city manager. He does a wonderful job. This was always part of his job. Grant it back to him. We get another city manager when he decides to retire, which I hope is not gonna be for a long time. Then you face that if you need to. If the other city manager doesn't stand up to what he should be doing. But right now, Mr. Lupo doesn't need fixing because he's not broke. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
Thomas Brown, 7436 Candlelight Court. If we don't have any idiots on city council, I don't see why the city council should not be able to present agenda items to the city manager or the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Well, just to be clear, we can still present agenda items.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right, right. That's,
But they'll have time to research it and,
Yeah.
and put it on and have it prepared for us.
you know, reflecting back after Mr. Rao's notes on prior councils, I kind of going back to the way it was, because I know the heavy burden that was put on by prior members of council. So,
It is a practical matter, trying to, it's harder to prepare when you can't talk to the person that puts the item
Absolutely.
on.
yeah.
So that's where I was at with it. So we have a first and a second. At this time, I was gonna put it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 I'll bring it back for a first reading. It will require 2 more votes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on tonight's agenda was
6.
item number 6. And this was the consideration of bid rejection for, or the bids for bid for Nix Park boat ramp repair. And I'm gonna turn that over to Mr. Lupo.
Mayor and council, Nix Park Boat Ramp is heavily used by local boaters and is in need of repair. Since 2018, the city has worked with Ayers Engineering to prepare plans and specification for this repair work. The city was awarded a 50-50 matching grant in the amount of $100,000 from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission for this project. The budget on this repair work was estimated at $120,725. The project was advertised through a public bid process on Bid Direct, with bids due on July 26, 2019. The city received 1 bid for this project at that time from Midcoast Construction Enterprises in the amount of $296,750. That is included in the agenda packet for review. Our engineer recommended that the city reject the bids and attempt to rebid the project. And I request a motion to reject the bid proposal for Nix Park Boat Ramp repair.
Thank you. This time, I don't know if there needs to be any discussion, but I'll open it to discussion and/or motion.
Well, I just have, while we're on Nix Park, another thing to add to possibly the agenda, Mr. Lupo.
I'm sorry?
Something possibly to add to the agenda while we're on Nix Park.
Okay.
I know that the moratorium now on us collecting fees for the ramp is passed. And we need to revisit those kiosks. And I know they're on a honesty type situation because the police can't always go down there and check. But some money is better than no money coming in down there. And most of the people using that boat ramp, I know we did a small survey at one time and almost everybody was from outside the city.
Correct.
So if we have a chance to put that on and revisit those kiosks for the parking, I
Absolutely.
appreciate that. Okay, thank you.
At this time, was there any further discussion with council first, and/or any other motions?
Well, we would have to put a motion to reject that.
Correct.
Yeah, motion to
Motion
reject,
to
yeah.
Yes,
reject.
there was formal bids, yeah.
Are you doing that?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
put forth a motion to reject the bid at Nix Park Boat Ramp.
Second.
Before, I see there's a couple of people signed up for this. I'm gonna limit you guys to 1 minute because we're running kinda late, but I wanted to call Pat Rogers first on this issue.
Pat Rogers, 4838 Sunset Boulevard. Can't we implement and sell stickers to the out-of-town people who are using the boat ramp and have stickers for the city residents that are a different color so that you can just drive through and see who's got a sticker and who hasn't? And, you know, give them a little present on their windshield if they don't have a sticker. And also, because the prop wash, you know, historically, the prop wash from Sun Cruise has undermined the one side of the boat ramp. Is there any way to get any money from them to help repair their damage?
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. And then I saw one other person signed up. It was Mr. Mueller. And I'm going to limit you to 1 minute as well, if I may, please.
Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive. Thank you for rejecting that bid. That's what needed to happen. Also, when does the matching funds expire? We need to be cognizant of when that, and if that is an issue, okay? 50/50 would only allow us to recover the dollars that we spent, correct? And we need to start over. Is there an opportunity to direct bid this with some of the other vendors that are on the BidNet doc that downloaded it? Can we direct call them and get other people or other companies in here looking at that and trying to get quotes? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller. Any other comments? At this time, there's a first and a second, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're going to move on to item number 7, which is another item that I asked to put on quite a while ago, and that's the Ritchie Drive Extension Project. And I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Lupo for some introduction.
You'll take a look at the presentation in front of you. This project was brought forward some time ago after a traffic analysis was completed. In March of 2008, the city hired Tyndall Oliver to perform a traffic analysis. An analysis was performed at the intersection of Old Post Road and Bay Boulevard using existing traffic data derived and collected through a traffic count and future projects and traffic, including future development. Under existing conditions, the level of service for the overall intersection for each of the 4 approaches is an acceptable level, a level called level A. Despite the roadways and intersections project to continue to operate at an acceptable level of service, there is a noticeable increase in the daily traffic volume on Bay Boulevard east and west of Old Post Road. We need to create a better distribution of trips in the area. The analysis recommended the extension of Ritchie Drive to Old Post Road. Now, is a critical statement. They recommended this. The extension of Ritchie Drive to Old Post Road would provide an alternative to Bay Boulevard and provide an alternative access on the north side of the multimodal developments that are currently have access only on Bay Boulevard. That is an overall map that might make life a little easier, because the survey that you find in your agenda really doesn't give you the true picture as that one up on the wall.
Thank you, Mr. Lupo.
This project would in fact provide several different advantages to the community, and associated with the redevelopment of Ritchie Drive, of the extension of Ritchie Drive, would also be efforts to address some of the flooding issues that occur at the intersection of Old Post and Bay. Because when that road would be constructed, drainage issues and flow of water would be part and parcel of the reconstruction or construction of that new road. In addition, once that new road is completed, and during that process, if council were to move forward with it, the current owners of that adjacent property, which is currently landlocked, would be contacted, and we would attempt to have discussions with them with respect to their participation in the construction of the project. So we attempted to bring this to council at the time of the traffic analysis. But at that point in time, the then council, for whatever reasons, felt that the project should not be undertaken. The funding for this project would come from our, primarily, at least initially, from our transportation impact fees. I think that currently that number is somewhere around $500,000 in our current budget. So it would have a meaningful impact for all of the residents who utilize Old Post and Bay as a crossing. And it also would remove the future potential traffic, or at least a large amount of that traffic, from the new development over by Lanier Homes. There absolutely have to be some additional studies conducted, and not from traffic standpoint, not from the survey standpoint, but from engineers who have given us some preliminary conversations and discussions with respect to potential drainage and construction, but a more detailed analysis of what the potential costs would be, and so we can come back to council, if council approves this project, with some meaningful numbers that would better flesh out the potentiality of this project as far as costs are concerned. The reality is that if this project were completed, it would provide the many advantages that I just spoke about, and the potentiality for future income with respect to the very likelihood of the development of that vacant piece of property that's currently landlocked. It would also involve the construction of both Calhoun Street and the Wilkins Street, I'm sorry, the other small side street, to allow further advantages of ingress and egress. So that's basically what the project is. It is a meaningful project on many different levels. It affects more individuals than those who currently reside in the immediate area, because a large amount of our citizens pass through that intersection of Old Post and Bay. So this project would affect not only that traffic, but then there is a strong potentiality of relieving some of the stormwater issues affecting that corner. And it is, if I can answer any questions, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Thank you, and I had just a few more comments, and then I was going to open it to the rest of the council. This is a project that I wanted to do because we have money in the budget, it looks like, for new roads that really can't be used on anything else. So looking at the construction and the layout of the city, this seems to be the best place to put a new road, as it would service where Lennar homes are coming in, and as those homes sell, it'll place a heavy burden on the intersection of Bay and Old Post Road. But also, one of the complaints that most common complaints that I've had is the intersection of Old Post and Bay, since the rains have been here, floods quite often. And certainly I believe that the best way to resolve that issue, or to address that issue, or if we're going to address that issue, would be to construct the road and then improve the infrastructure at the same time, as I believe that they go hand in hand. The other benefit that I see long-term is the tax base. With all those houses going in I think the value of those houses will be a lot higher if we have transportation and roadways in and out and better infrastructure. So certainly, I think the overall benefit over time in terms of our overall tax base will be greatly increased by increasing the infrastructure. So that was one of the reasons that I asked Mr. Lupo to put this on for discussion. The other reason is because there were already transportation studies done. We had something to work off of. So those were all the reasons that I was looking at this particular project, and I wanted to ask consideration of council to open this for discussion purposes.
Mr. Lupo and I have had the same conversations as obviously you and the mayor have had. So one of the questions was, in the Ritchie Drive extension, would we then include that Calhoun, and I think that's Tabor, the other
Yes, sir.
road?
Yes, sir.
Because that's where our
Absolutely.
drainage is gonna be, because if we can pipe or even swale that out underneath Ritchie North, that will
Correct.
alleviate a lot. So that is in that project, extending those other two roads?
Yes, sir. Part and parcel of the road reconstruction would involve a study of the drainage and the potential alleviation of some of the flooding conditions that are there.
The traffic is a great one, but the flooding is a huge issue at that corner.
So what are we requesting? We're requesting to move forward in looking at engineering studies
Yes,
and
sir.
drainage
Yes, ma'am.
studies
Yeah, but,
and traffic study, another traffic analysis of that?
that last traffic analysis, I believe, is only about a year old. I forgot the date of it, so that's pretty
It's
current.
only a year old.
It's pretty current. What we are requesting is if council approves, we'll go forward with some engineering studies to reaffirm the issues that we spoke about, to make sure that, in fact, it isn't a $10 million project, but is one that we can reasonably accomplish within our own budgetary limits over a certain period of time, and will achieve the goals that we anticipated to achieve, which is not only traffic, but also potentiality of flood mitigation. So we're looking forward to, if council concurs in this project, to move forward with this engineering studies for it.
Do we put that out for quote on the studies, or do we already have an engineering company that I think we already do have one, right, that we normally work with?
We'll solicit the engineer for proposals on what it would cost to do
Proposals,
this
okay,
work.
thank you. That was the question.
So basically, it's the motion to ask for the proposal from the engineer
Right.
to proceed with?
Yes.
Okay.
Are we still considering making that a one-way street?
That'll be part and parcel of what engineers will be telling us, because it'll involve issues of flood mitigation, whether there will be swales, whether it'll be piped, those kinds of issues. And at the same time, we'll come back and, if necessary, revisit the traffic analysis for any update based on any current updates in the area from
That
traffic
would not be a
analysis.
restriction?
Pardon me?
You're not gonna put that on the restriction to make that a one-way, because I
No.
think that wouldn't be practical.
No, I think that we'll go along with whatever the traffic analysis and updates from them would be to make it most practical.
So, okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
To make it most efficient, particularly with the utilization of the two side roads from Old Post.
So it would be actually they're from Bay, it would be Bay to Ritchie Drive on Calhoun and Tabor.
From Bay, correct, sir.
So the motion is to go out to the engineer to solicit bids for further studies. And you had mentioned you were going to talk to the landowners to see if there's any interest in participating in the development of.
Yes, yes, they, I believe they're the Cremans, and I believe they're in Holland or someplace, but we'll certainly reach out to them. They came to the city almost 20 years ago with the potential development, but again, that was 20 years ago. Times have changed, and I assure you the impact of this road will have a major impact on their property.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And one-
Just go right up.
Not to speak out of school, but I assure you that if, and I'll be very limited in what I'm going to say about this direction, but if we don't obtain any cooperation from them at one point in time, they certainly will move towards development, and we'll have a certain set of standards for them to achieve.
And then the other question that I had, I just wanted to make sure,
I hope I was
does the city own
kind of clear with that.
Does the city own enough property to do what we do as what we want to do in terms of this particular?
I think that would be part and parcel of the engineering comments.
Okay, so we do own a parcel that runs all the way through.
Yes, we do, sir. The survey is right there.
That's what the survey was for.
Yeah, and the right of way and everything, that's all
It's
ours.
a flat survey.
Yep.
That's what this is. That's why we did it. Okay. We did this survey to determine what we own.
No, I saw, but it looks like a real thin strip of land. I didn't know if a road would fit in there, that's why.
Oh, I don't know.
So-
You'd have to ask them.
Right.
I presume somebody studied this, blown it up, whoever did it.
Gotcha, that's the only thing I
That
was
was
trying
the
to figure.
purpose of doing it, to see what we own.
Because I was looking at the strip of land and I wasn't sure if that was gonna accommodate roads, sidewalks, street lamps, whatever it may need to go, so that was one of the issues.
I suspect that the landowner to the north would probably be very cooperative if we need another 5 or 10 feet.
I agree with you, sir.
Okay, that's all I was getting at. That having been said, I just wanted to open it back up to discussion and/or any motions that there may be.
I'll go ahead and make the motion to proceed with the
Yeah, and
proposals.
to be honest, you don't need a formal motion, because all we're gonna do is go get a quote, a proposal,
Proposal.
because someone off the CNNA list, and so you'll have to come back to vote on that anyway.
Okay.
All right.
So use the concession, just say yes, no?
Yes.
Yep, more than 3 of you?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so you'll be coming back with a quote.
Thank you.
20,000 to do X, that'd be that kind of
To
thing.
the gentleman in the audience.
And sir, if I may hear from you?
Blaine Lee, 5713 Berlin. I would hope that if you're going to go further with this project, you might investigate widening Wilkins between Bay and Ritchie Drive, because that's going to be quite an intersection, and also widening Ritchie Drive to where it's at now, where it's narrow. Encompass all this into the one project.
Yes, sir.
Because if you don't, you're gonna have a big bottleneck at Wilkins and Bay and Ritchie.
Yes, sir,
Yeah,
thank you.
Sure.
So, we're gonna move on to, it looks like there's one last item,
Number 8.
which is number 8, which is a recodification of the city code or ordinances that deal with land development codes as well.
Very exciting.
Yep.
We're working on this for a year now, okay. Every 10 years, the city revisits its code to determine constitutional and statutory compliance, okay? All cities do this. I didn't do this, Municode does this. They did it over the course of months and sections. And I'll try to keep this simple, is all they're doing is looking at state statutes that passed in the last 10 years, or cases that came down, or changes to the Constitution, which the mayor would probably understand better, and then they look at that in each one of our sections of both the Port Ritchie Code and the Land Development Code, and make changes in compliance with state statutes, certain citations. There's no substantive changes being made. Having said that, the reason it's a bit overwhelming this time in terms of, you'll see 2 ordinances there, just so you understand. There's the Port Ritchie Code, and we have the Port Ritchie Land Development Code. And I'm going to be bringing back to you 2 ordinances adopting new ones. And the reason we're doing that is because someone, when they passed the Land Development Code 20 years ago, decided it was a good idea to use the same numbers in that code as the other code. And so in the Port Ritchie Code, there was 35 chapters, let's say, and they're not, so every citation is chapter 3-289. Well, in the Land Development Code, there's a chapter 3, so there's a 3-289. So people are constantly calling here, you know, what's this, other lawyers, things like this. But more importantly, almost all of our records now are being kept in the cloud or wherever it is. I'm not a tech person. So when someone asks us for something, especially aged 4 or 5 years, and we want to kind of look at it generally first, well, it always has to do with some section of either code. And so we'll type in a search 2-282. Well, right now we get up, everything's mushed together. You understand what I mean? So this isn't going to fix itself in a day, but over the course of years, it'll be cleaning it up. So the main reason we're readopting the entire code is because if you look real careful, you'll see that the numbers have changed and nothing else. Okay, so the Port Ritchie Code's going to start at 1, that hasn't changed at all, to chapter 38 and all the sections. And the Land Development Code will start at 101 and go forward. Okay, that's as exciting as it gets. There is one substantive change I made, which is, I believe it's in chapter 36, when there were some issues concerning the police impound lot. I was reviewing the statute, our code section, and apparently someone used the same exact code as Newport Ritchie and missed a sentence. And the way it works is when you, I'm just telling you this because this is the only actual change in everything that's there. When you impound a car, various notices go out by the police. Then if there's no response and they don't request a hearing before the magistrate, don't go into court, then all that certified mail, it all gets certified, and I think it's 180 days goes by, and police department packages all that up and sends them out to sell the vehicles. Well, at the end of that, either a special magistrate or myself as the city attorney has to sign an order that they've received all of the proper notifications. So I'm a little surprised that they're actually still selling those. I think something's probably being signed over there saying that's all in proper order, but they actually need my order to do that, which is a safeguard for us. There's a sentence in there, I could show it to you if you want. It says, and there'll be an order by the city attorney. Outside of that, that's all it is. If you have any questions, I can answer them. This council's already voted to do this last year, so I just figured I'd bring it back this way before I brought it back for first reading. Does everybody understand all that? I mean,
Yeah,
you've
that's
seen the
what-
proofs that came as an
That's why
attachment.
I
They're like
called you.
500,000 pages, so.
So,
You want to actually see it, Jocelyn's got the actual hard copy. And there's only one hard copy now. They cost $1,000. We used to get 10 or 12 a year. We used to give them to all the boards. We don't do that anymore.
I wanted to bifurcate the discussion and talk about the recodification, which is pretty standard. You would always have 1 through 35, and then if you have similar codes or ordinances in a different chapter, you would go 101 to 10 or 135, so on and so forth. So is anyone opposed to the recodification for storage purposes?
No.
Okay. So I don't think we need to vote on that. That's just something that we can.
Well, no, I'm just, actually, you don't need to vote now. I'm bringing back these 2 ordinances here to redo, the Senate review next week. I just didn't want to bring them here and throw it all in your face and give you a vote.
And then the other issue raised is one that falls into my line of work, so I can comment on that. Really, the biggest reason for reversal when we're dealing with property auctioning is always notice issues. So just from my line of work, we can save the city a lot of headache, I think, by requiring the notices to go back to the city manager for review before we proceed. So I would think that would generally be a good idea. If there's any other comments. I think there were a couple people signed up from the general public. Is there anyone that wants to comment on this particular agenda item? Okay. So no issues with either one from anyone on the council?
No.
Okay. And at this time, is there any old business to come?
I would like to have on the agenda for the next meeting in September to have the department reports brought back up again, the fire department, the police department, and the building department, so that we can have that information available to the public.
If I might, I'll pass out the current project status for the month. We're only halfway through into it. And at our next meeting, when we have this, we'll have it up on the wall for review. But yes, we'll begin to have the department head reports beginning in the next meeting.
Okay. And for the public, we're going to have an election next month on September 10th, so the council meeting will be on Wednesday,
The 11th.
the 11th. Otherwise, I think that's all the old business that I have.
And the swearing in that Monday? And swearing in that Monday?
The Monday after the council meeting and
just
the
like-
election, okay.
Any other old business?
I believe I signed up for that last one and you didn't acknowledge my signature.
I asked if anyone wanted to speak. I didn't see any hands or anything, so.
Yeah, because I thought you were gonna move forward and pull that.
Oh, I apologize. We'll give you 1 minute, Mr. Mueller, if that's okay.
Good. Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive. Glancing through that voluminous document, I did notice a couple points that maybe, and this is a point that they're going to address. I believe there was an election last April that changed the way you could remove the city manager. This document stated 4/5, and I believe it's now simple majority. That has not been updated here, or should it be? In addition, I believe, to make clarification on the expenditures, it indicates that bids over 25,000 indicate that they're sealed bids and publicly opened. I haven't seen a single one opened in public. The third point of item is relative to parking. This is a boating community. One of our mottos is our gateway to the Gulf. I did note that there was options about no parking boats and stuff and watercraft and things in the driveways, and wondered if that could be revisited at some future point.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller. With that, was there any other old business? If not, were there any motions to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.